Peace and blessings, family. Welcome back to the Rose Garden. I know it's been a while since we've communed together for a vibe session. However, we are back. I have a lot of things planned for us in the garden. And today, I wanted to dedicate some time to discuss my life as a mental health therapist. For a lot of you, you may know that my beautiful spiritual journey has led me back to my long-time dream of being a mental health therapist. And I've often gotten a lot of questions about what is life like being a therapist? How do you like being a therapist? Things like that. And so I thought it would be only right to drop in and share some of the things that I've learned in my first year as a licensed mental health therapist. All right, so sit tight and we're gonna come back and I'm gonna tell you, I think, 5 things, a good 5 things that I've learned in my first year as being a licensed mental health therapist.
I am purposeful. I am worthy of loving myself deeply.
All right, let's hop into it. So one of the first things that I learned, and this is not in a specific order, y'all. This is just how it came up, and so I'm sharing it in the order that it came up. However, there is not one, in my opinion, that is more important than the other. Honestly, I strongly believe that they're all equally as important and are things that are important to learn for me personally, and maybe for some other people that are on their journey to being a therapist or a school counselor, or maybe some things that we just may naturally struggle with, because these are things that are continual themes that come up in my day-to-day life as a licensed mental health therapist. All right, so first thing that I want to talk about that is important is well, one of the things that I learned in my first year as a mental health therapist is setting limits, really honoring my limits, understanding what my limits are. That is something that I found to be extremely important from my internships all the way throughout my first year, because typically when we're coming into the profession of being a mental health therapist, we are in this field to genuinely help people. And it's always been one of the values that I have is being of service. That is something that I've carried with me as a yoga instructor, as a yoga therapist, as a life coach, as a Reiki master. I did all of these things because I genuinely wanted to be of service. I wanted to bring people into things, or bring the things to people rather, that have genuinely helped me. Yoga has helped me, spirituality has helped me, right? Understanding things that I really struggle with within my own mental health, because to be honest, each human has certain things that we may find that we have to balance within our mental health, and spirituality is something that really helped me with that when I took on yoga principles and things like that, and did life coaching and things like that. I really found my grounding, and these are things that I wanted to bring to people that may not have the access, right? And so as that carried me over into being a mental health therapist, that's something that is one of my guiding lights, is being of service. I want to genuinely help people. However, when we are in the business of being of service and genuinely helping people, we do have to learn our limits, because we will get burnt out. Not setting limits, not understanding limits, not honoring limits are things that can easily burn somebody out when we do not honor our limits. You know, we may find ourselves stressed. We may find ourselves taking work home with us. We may find ourselves really becoming attached to certain clients. And also, if we don't understand our limits, then people can genuinely use us, and that will take the love out of things that we have. And so honoring limits is genuinely important, and honoring limits can also look like maybe stretching for some while maybe reducing for others. However, it's all in service to honoring those limits, because sometimes for me, maybe I can stretch a little bit for some people. However, on the other end, maybe sometimes I have to kind of consolidate and maybe condense. And um that's learning your own internal compass and what you can take, what you can't take, what you can give and what you maybe cannot give, and that may change daily. However, honoring limits is something that is genuinely important. All right, let's get into the second thing that I learned. The second thing that I learned is enhancing and maintaining and sticking to my self-care and my spiritual practice. All right, for a lot of my people out there that are on my Patreon, for a lot of people out there that may follow me on other social media sites, you may know that my spiritual practice is something that grounds me to the core. And I found that in my first year of therapy, I really had to increase my discipline. And that is something that I'm still learning. That is something that I'm still developing, and it may change and it may shift, because the only constant in life is change. And so changes are always being made. However, what I learned is that I had to enhance it. And I say enhance it because I went from being a person that taught yoga full time. I did life coaching full time. I was running my own business, you know. That is why I was on here a lot. I had certain things that I was doing. I was taking clients for life coaching, for Reiki healing, for yoga therapy, right? However, that was my own business, and so I was able to kind of move and flex how I wanted to. And so while my spiritual practice was still genuinely serious, um it was a part of what I did, right? And so my cup typically was always filled in some way, because when I'm doing Reiki healing and Reiki therapy, that's equally healing for me. I don't walk away feeling drained. When I'm doing yoga therapy and life coaching, I'm actively doing the things with my clients, right? So as I'm doing the singing bowls, it's healing me. As I'm doing breath work with the client, I'm doing it too. So we're both in this thing together, and it's a beautiful energy exchange. So I'm not, so it doesn't feel as though somebody is taking because my cup is being filled. Now, I still experience a little bit of burnout because you're running your own business. Balance has to be had, right? Because sometimes I have to be on a lot, right? However, here in my first year of therapy, I realized that this is something that's different because there's not a lot of reciprocity, right? Now, I can incorporate some of my things if that's what the client wants. However, that's not the whole shebang bada, right? I'm dealing with many different people from many different walks of life. I'm taking on a lot of energies, a lot of problems, things like that. And so discipline had to be a little bit more, you know, I had to grab that thing by the horns and really build discipline. And once I developed a new sense of discipline, it's something that has sustained me to where I find that I don't walk away from work most days feeling drained. And the days where I do walk away feeling drained, I'm able to come home to my space and refill my cup. And that's so important. And so my banishing work is on a schedule. My healing work is on a schedule, right? I have certain things that I do to make sure that I am protected, to make sure that I am filled, and to make sure that I'm on my square enough. Now, does that mean that this thing is perfect and that my self-care and my spirituality looks perfect? I don't think that there's a perfection in that, because that's according to the needs of each individual. But for me, I believe that I found a footing enough that can be sustained. And so what that looks like for me is when I'm at work, I always have a head wrap on. If, and if it's not a full-on head wrap, it's something like this to where my crown is ultimately covered, right? If I'm not wearing a head wrap, I have on a hat. I have, you know, if it's the winter and maybe I'm like, I don't want to wear a head wrap today, my crown is still covered. When it comes to my space, I smudge my space. And if I'm not smudging my office on a regular, I'm smudging my home on a regular to make sure that it's not coming home, right? I have certain parameters and things in place that act as boundary lines to where I'm not taking on people's energy. And maybe some of the genuine spirits that some people grapple with, because that is a real thing. Sometimes somebody that is struggling with spirits and have things, you know, on them, that can come through as a mental illness, and that is a real thing. It just is what it is. But yeah, let's get into the third thing. So the third thing that I learned in my first year as a licensed mental health therapist kind of coincides with limits, however slightly different, just a little different, and that is setting boundaries. Now, boundaries in my perspective is a lot for self, not really for other people. Now, can we set boundaries for other people? Yes. However, when we're talking about boundaries, I strongly lean into the fact and narrative that it's more for me than for the person, because it is my job to uphold the boundary, right? Especially if it's in service to my mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health, right? So with the boundaries for me look like setting boundaries in a way of time frame, having a parameter on the population that I see, and ultimately shifting with the season. Now, as you know, I did a video about winter, and that being kind of like a dead season for a many reasons, right? We talked about spirits, we talked about nature, right? Things like that. And so for me, I learned that boundaries for me can also shift when it comes to seasons. It might sound a little funny, however, just work with me, just walk with me, okay? So boundaries that I said was just time frame, the hours that I work. Now, when it comes to that overflowing into limits, it can stretch and flex when it needs to. However, it's being mindful of boundary for me, right? Because that boundary of time, right, helps me to take care of my needs. Because if, again, I'm not full, I'm not going to show up as effective and as full as I need to be for the people that I serve. When it also comes to population, right, I have a very specific population. It's always been my dream to work with a very specific population that has to deal with younger people, and kind of a little bit up. And so with that, that's a boundary for me, because that's something that helps me feel full. Now, can that stretch and flex if needed? Absolutely, because I'm aware of my limits. However, boundaries are there because, again, it protects me mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And then the other piece of that is just really being able to be mindful of those boundaries and walking in that way, okay? Because these boundaries help to keep me contained. These boundaries help to keep me just really on my square and full. And boundaries can look different for everybody. However, boundaries within this first year was really important because of ultimately my lifestyle, right? I have a family, all of these things, and so I do have to be mindful of balance. And so having these boundaries in place helps me keep balance within the work, home, and ultimately me. Now, this isn't a work-life balance type thing because it looks different for everybody. However, having certain boundaries in place help me be able to show up as a wife, to show up as a mom, to show up as a friend, to show up for myself. These are things that are really important because if we don't keep these boundaries in place, right, again, sure shot to burnout, sure shot to resentment, maybe a sure shot for me going back to being a full-time yoga teacher, which is fine by me. However, I absolutely love what I do. And so boundaries in that way also help me to continuously love what I do, because historically in other things that I've done that I also love, I did not have boundary. I did not have limits. I was not practicing self-care and spirituality in a way that kept what I loved close to my heart. So let's go into the fourth thing. The fourth thing that I learned is leaning and looking to my colleagues for support. I absolutely love the type of therapy that I do. It is called DBT therapy, and it is a team-based type of therapy to where you are able to lean onto your colleagues for support, for consultation, for staffing, for all the things. And so I do not feel alone, and that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And as many of us know, it is very rare to be in an environment, especially a work environment, where you can look to your people for support and genuinely feel the support. And it is a very genuine thing. Now, does it come with certain things? Yes, because we're all human. However, the support from a team, especially as a therapist, is wildly important because it keeps you on your square, meaning that at any point in time that I may question that I'm not sticking to some type of protocol, my colleagues are there. If there's ever a time where I may feel like I'm in over my head, my colleagues are there. If there's any time where I may need a genuine break, my colleagues are there. And that is something that is so wildly important. Because again, it keeps what I love close to my heart, and it helps me to maintain myself as a human first, and then as a therapist, and then as somebody that is being of service to a big population of people. So I absolutely love that. And learning that within my first year was important because it makes the work not easy, but it, in a sense, I don't feel heavy, and that's something that I'm happy that I learned within my first year as a therapist, because I think sometimes it's easy to be in an office, a office setting, and to just shut your door and just go to work and do the job and then go home, versus having the mindset of that is an option, and if I need to do that, I can, and when I need to, I will. However, knowing that I don't have to, and that's beautiful. Let's go into the fifth thing. The fifth thing that I learned in my first year as a therapist, which is very important, is leaving work at work, not bringing work home, which is hard to do, right, for a lot of us. However, yes, there's the confidentiality piece. However, that's not what I'm talking about when I say leaving work at work. What I mean by that is this also ties into self-care and spiritual practice. When I come home, for the most part, I have a sheer shot of a routine. And even if I don't get to that routine every single day, it's okay. Now, what I will say, what helps with that is that I have a beautiful drive home. I probably live maybe 20-30 minutes away from my office. So the drive helps. However, as a therapist, I think it is very easy to have your therapist hat on 24/7. And that's another piece of not bringing work home. yes, I am a mental health therapist. However, that is not all that I am. And I think it is beautiful that I went through my spiritual journey. I did yoga, life coaching, right? All the things that I do. I'm very happy that I did those things first because I have a very strong sense of self. I feel very grounded in who I am as a woman, and a spiritualist. I feel very grounded in the woman that I am. And so, because of that, I have a solid identity in myself. And so, I do strongly believe that that does help me not be a therapist 24/7. Because if I was to bring work home, I'll be therapizing my husband, I would be therapizing my child, I would be therapizing my friends, I'll be therapizing everybody that I came in proximity to, close proximity to. And that can really, ruin relationships. Versus I am a therapist, that is what I do, and it helps me to stay on my square. It helps the relationships that I have when needed, because there's a heightened accountability. There is a heightened accountability, and I love that, because my people hold me accountable because I am a therapist, right? They're like, hey, you can't be, acting any type of way, because how would how would you tell your clients that looked, right? And so there is an accountability internally and from my community, um, in that respect. And it's just the heightened awareness that if I was to therapize the people that I absolutely love, then that may hurt. That may genuinely hurt. And then two, I don't bring work home, because if I brought work home, that means that I have built attachments to certain clients that I have. And that's when I would have to kind of check myself at the door as a therapist and say, all right, maybe something needs to change. Now is there a sense of duty and a sense of maybe concern? Absolutely. I'm a human and I care about the people that I'm in service to. However, there is a boundary, there are limits that are in place. So these are the things that I learned. Excuse me. These are the things that I learned, and I'm so happy that I learned them. However, the number one thing, and this isn't even on the list because I think it goes without saying, is that the number one thing that I learned is that I absolutely love what I do, and I'm absolutely happy. I'm absolutely happy that I took the route that I did. I'm absolutely happy that I made the choices that I made. And it is something where I can honestly say that I'm ever learning and I'm ever growing. And that is an expectation as a therapist, is that you continue to take trainings, you continue to learn, you continue to master your craft, you continue to sharpen your tools. Because we are all students first, and it's beautiful to be a student of the art, the same way that I'm a student of yoga, a student of life coaching, a student of Reiki. Sometimes, I love being in the seat of the student or the person that just needs healing, because it's humbling and it's recharging. Um, and the same holds true, like as a therapist, I'm a student of it first, and I absolutely love it. But these are the things that I learned, and I'm happy that I learned them within my first year, because sometimes it takes people a long time to learn these things, and I think that these are foundational. And is it hard at times to honor these things in like some type of perfect way? Yeah. And it's not to look perfect. It is being able to do a lot of inventory and self-reflection to assess these things, maybe sometimes daily, because sometimes my limits change daily. The one thing that does not really change are my boundaries, because these are the things that are really centered around my values. However, the limits that I have, those may shift. When it comes to my spiritual and like self-care practice, sometimes that looks different daily, but I will tell you that I take care of myself and I put myself first, because that is important, right? And when it comes to not bringing work home, that's important. Are there some days where I have to be very transparent and say, hey, I just need a moment and a time to myself? Hey, I just need a hug. Hey, I had a hard day. Yes. However, that's needed, because a part of not bringing work home It's not coming in the door with a really nasty attitude. It's being able to say, hey, I had a rough day at work, you know, just kind of be patient with me while I reset. And I reset and I come back and I'm okay. And sometimes it's beautiful to have the community that I have to pour into me in those times where I need it. And so maybe the honorable mention is that it's important to have a supportive community, not just in your colleagues, but in your life, to have a supportive community that is okay with you needing to take some time, that is okay with you needing to, you know, kind of curl up in a ball and just kind of lay there because you had a long day. Um, but yeah, this is my first year of being a mental health therapist in the books. Am I done teaching yoga? No. I have an event coming up here every first Sunday. Am I done being a Reiki master? No. I am taking clients virtual and in person. Am I done being a life coach? No. I'm taking clients virtually and in person. I love being of service. And this is just the, I don't know if you can call it the cherry on top or my Mount Everest. It kind of feels like my Mount Everest because this is my childhood dream. And so if I was to do this for forever and axe everything else, I think I would genuinely be fulfilled. And everything that I do, I love doing. And I've built boundaries around those things. So if you have any questions, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, in the comment section. Yeah. I hope this answers some of y'all's questions about how is it being a therapist? How do you like being a therapist? I love it. These are some things that I learned. So again, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you have any feedback, let me know in the comments. If you would like to know more about what I do, let me know in the comments. And yeah, continue to share, to like, to comment, and to subscribe. Send this to somebody that you think would absolutely love it. And also check out my Patreon because there's a lot of exclusive stuff that will not be on the tube of you. All right. Like behind the scenes videos of me setting up this video, like in-depth breakdowns of my personal yoga practice, like in-depth breakdowns of all things spirituality, because there are some things that I think are very sacred and that can be kept close knit. And so if you're interested in those things, the link to the Patreon is in the description below. Click on that and do some exploring. There's breakdowns of breath work. There's breakdowns of how to make certain medicines. There's breakdowns of certain spiritual principles that I follow, and a lot more to come, because we're back in our bag, honey. So let me know what you would like to see. I love you all. Peace and blessings.